صبحكم الله بالخير جميعا. نرحب فيكم في اليوم الثاني في المؤتمر العالمي الأول للتعليم المفتوح اللي تنظمه الجامعة العربية المفتوحة بالتعاون مع المركز الإقليمي لتطوير البرمجيات التعليمية، وراح استحضر دقيقة إن شاء الله مو أكثر البرنامج حق اليوم إن شاء الله. أول جلساتنا حق اليوم يشرفنا أن يترأسه الدكتور مساعد الهارون، وزير التربية والتعليم العالي الأسبق في الكويت وسفير دولة الكويت جمهورية ألمانيا الاتحادية. جلسة راح تتكون من كينوت سبيك، وعندنا بعدين محاضرتين وراها تستمر إن شاء الله من الساعة 9 لحد الساعة 11 وربع. راح تكون عندنا استراحة بعدها ربع ساعة، بعدين راح تبدأ عندنا الجلسة الخامسة، وهذول راح تكون جلستين متزامنتين، فراح تكون عندنا 2 parallel session. محاضرة راح تكون هنا، وفي عندنا محاضرة في القاعة الدائرية في الدور الرابع يمشون in parallel. بعدين راح يصير عندنا إن شاء الله ساعة غدا من 12:30 ل 1:30. والجلسة الأخيرة لهذا اليوم راح يكون أيضا جلستين متوازيتين كمين سيشن هني فيها القاعة الرئيسية، والجلسة الأخيرة إن شاء الله فوق. وراح يصير عندنا إن شاء الله اليوم برنامج اجتماعي الساعة 5، راح نعلن شوية تفاصيل عنه بعدين. ودي أنا أنتهز الفرصة بأن في هناك مايك حق الترجمة. We have direct and continuous translation from Arabic to English and vice versa. So please, if you need any help in this, our assistant, our colleagues there will help you on this. أتمنى لكم يوم موفق.
في أمس ناسين سماعات وياهم
بعض المشاركين الظاهر ناسين سماعات وياهم مثل ما قاعد يقول الأخ، فتكون موجودة. يعطيكم العافية وموفقين.
صباحكم الله بالخير. وبداية أود أن أتقدم بالشكر والتقدير للجامعة العربية المفتوحة والمجلس المركز الإقليمي لتطوير البرمجيات التعليمية على تنظيمهم هذا المؤتمر المتميز. ويؤسفني أن لن أشارك مساء أمس في جلسات المؤتمر لأنني طلعت على مدار فيه، وكانت محاضرات قيمة وكان افتتاح موفق، وأتمنى إن شاء الله أن يستمر هذا المؤتمر فيما تبقى منه من محاضرات وندوات ومداخلات لإثراء موضوع في غاية الأهمية. يسعدني أن أرحب بكم في هذا اليوم مثل الجلسة الرابعة للمؤتمر، ويسعدني أن يكون معنا 3 من خيرة المتحدثين ومن خيرة الخبرات العالمية في هذا المجال. سيكون المتحدث الرئيسي Dr. Fritz Benekok. Dr. Fritz, if you allow me to speak in English, just to introduce you, President of Athabasca University of Canada, and probably is the only open university in Canada, if I know very well. It's a pioneer university, and I wasn't sure. I spent about 5 years as ambassador to Canada. Unfortunately, I did not have the chance to meet Dr. Benekok at that time, but I heard about the university, and I think Professor Benekok has a very advanced knowledge about open university and open education. Also president of ICDE from 2008 to 2011, and he's a leader figure not only in Canada but in North America and in the world in the area of free learning. He was professor at the University of Calgary, and he has a long CV. I don't want to take the time to speak about it, but يعني اسمحوا لي أن أطلب من الدكتور بنكك to give his keynote speaker, and then راح يكون هناك متحدثين بعد ذلك معقبين 2 سيتم تقديمهم إن شاء الله لكل واحد على حدة. سيكون المتحدث الرئيسي لمدة 45 دقيقة، سيتبعه متحدثين كما ذكرت لمدة ربع ساعة، ثم سيفتح المجال للنقاش والحوار والأسئلة بعد ذلك. Welcome, Doctor. Please.
Thank you very much, and it's a real privilege to be here today to share some thoughts that I have on e-universities, and e-universities particularly in an international context, and I will try to do that. I've been very fortunate when I was president of the International Council of Distance Education, or ICDA, which is a UNESCO-affiliated body, to visit many of the e-universities of the world, or the digital or the open universities. And while it was a very positive experience, I also noticed internationally a very distressing tendency as we move forward in the e-university movement with increasing regulation and increasing lack of acceptance of what e-universities can do. And I'll explain why I think that is. But first I'll start out with the context of generally what is an e-university and what can it become? Well, what will it look like? Well, most people think universities should be buildings. And I say most university presidents, like myself, have a fixation for buildings, because if you give a building to your university, you must be a great president. Well, in the new e-university, those presidents that give new buildings are not going to be, what I would argue, successful. This is, I will have to admit, a new university, a new building at Athabasca University. And our university grew from its first building, which was intended for 5,000 students. We now have 40,000 students. And in order to house the faculty and the infrastructure, we did need a new building. Well, what will that new university really look like? It's very hard to describe it or to show it in diagrams, but it can in words, by asking questions. Will the e-university be low cost? Yes, it will. Our university, for example, spends 10 cents for every dollar that a classic university spends. So we are an incredibly low cost option. Can a university actually be ubiquitous? That is, everywhere, at any time, for everyone? Well, that's the ultimate objective of our university, and we have begun to achieve that, though there are barriers. And then the next question is, can a university be open to everyone? A lot of people will say no, and I'm saying if the world wants to double the number of university or post-secondary, let's say post-secondary graduates in the next 10 to 20 years, the next generation, it must be open to everyone, because if we put up barriers, which we currently do, barriers of income or barriers of grade point average, the universities will not succeed. The world will not succeed. And there are, I've noticed in the last 10 years, a significant increase in the number of barriers that nation states have put up to learning. And I can explain why if I have the nerve to do so, because it'll be highly controversial, some of my observations. And then, can a university be independent of time and space? Now, some people will argue no, but our university is independent of time and independent of space. You can learn 24/7. We have students in 78 countries. Well, if it wasn't independent of time, it would be a very awkward situation, and if it wasn't independent of space. The next question, which I know is always asked, and some people are politer about asking it than others, can an e-university be a quality university? Well, as I'll point out, is nobody exactly has a universal definition of quality. The e-universities, or the open universities of this world, ICDE has been debating for some time, is what is quality? Well, we have some indications, but quality is not what the ranking bodies will tell you it is. Number one ordinal is the entry grades of student. If you have the highest possible entry grades, you may make it into the top 20 or 30 in the world. But as I've often said, you have to be a very bad university if the top 10% of students in the world can't graduate successfully. It's if you're taking the medium-range students, can you transform them into the best learners in the world? And that is an incredible challenge which open universities have shown they can do. And then in order to actually globally move students into doubling the number of students from several tens of millions of more, we have to go into massive online courses. The only reason, one of the key reasons we have to do that is there aren't enough faculty in the world for traditional institutions. So you have to think differently. And as I'll show, thinking differently can result in some incredible outcomes. Universities have a multiple set of obligations. One is teaching, another is research. And the Open University in the UK has done incredible work in using crowdsourcing techniques to actually involve all citizens in science, and that has become very empowering. Our university also involves citizens in science and environmental science in particular. They're passionate about it in Canada, and we get some very good outcomes. Again, I'm talking at a very high level, but there is actual detail. Well, what are the outcomes of a university? We talked a bit about this yesterday. Will students be more satisfied? Well, in Alberta, which is the jurisdiction I work in, we do a survey every other year of students. And our students are always more satisfied, and when we also test the skill outcomes, they always do better except in one area. One thing that we are very proud of at our university, which any university that is an open university should be proud of and should measure as a quality outcome, is how many new first-in-family have you graduated? Because if your parents went to university, the chances of you going are very, very high. At our university, it's 74%. We are truly and very proud to be an instrument of transformation. And I believe that that can happen globally, and our university does work with governments throughout the world to see if we can make that kind of difference again. And then some of the other things that were talked about. Can you have real learning, and can you have real learning and deep learning in a responsive environment? Well, as I'll show, yes, you can. And can you also have learning, because often learning in an open university is unstructured and self-directed. Can you have that? Yes. And can the open universities demonstrate and actually achieve change? I will argue that they could, but likely they won't. And as a person who's retiring in 6 months, I can wallow occasionally in what I call the slough of despond and despair, because the changes that I was hoping would happen aren't necessarily the changes that will happen. Well, that e-university of the future, that is a dream that many of us have, does that university exist, at least in part today? Well, I would argue its roots are there, it just needs cultivation. The open university movement around the world, by my estimate, and it's a low estimate, has about 20 million students. That's a lot of students, and they could double that number again depending on which model they chose. The most recent movement in the open educational resources is also a key underpinning on the massification of knowledge. And again, that is supported in many parts of the world, but there is also a counter movement in the world which is based on the tightening up of copyright laws. Tightening up of copyright laws in Canada, in the United States, in the European Union. And I would argue that the open universities must take leadership in both the OER movement and in persuading governments that these very tight copyright laws are not appropriate if you want to massify learning. If you want to contain it to a wealthy few, then copyright laws are one way of doing it. And I have in Canada been fighting our copyright laws with some success. Again, we all are aware of MOOCs and how they can work, and as our university at Athabasca, we have found ways of accrediting our students who have taken MOOCs. Professor Muhammad Ali has actually given credit to students who have taken MOOCs. We also offer our own MOOCs. For example, in a belief of being service to community, we give away all our courses in municipal government. So every official, every new elected person in the province of Alberta who's a municipal official will take at no cost our courses. That is something we believe in giving back. Now, what is most important for the foundation of the University of the Future, it is being built as we speak, and we have an expert, Professor George Seaman, out of Alberta, and we have a considerable, and we're very grateful for it, funding from the Gates Foundation, and this is in learning analytics. When learning analytics is fully developed, you will be able to trace a student's learning concept by concept by concept. So if you're a professor and your students are logged on, you will be able to know exactly where they are. You will be able to track their learning. You will be able to adjust that learning. And we have some phenomenal research in that field. I use an example. The highest failure rate course in North America, which stops students from going into the science, technology, medicine, and engineering disciplines, is calculus. The failure rate is between 40 to 60%. If we can track how a student learns that, and we can solve all those learning issues, it would be an incredible success. And we have invested well over $1 million in that project to determine. And the reason learning analytics is so important, and why I think it'll be important internationally, one of the greatest international concerns in the Open University is examinations. Are examinations secure? Did the students really learn anything? Well, imagine a university in which there are no exams anymore, because every student will submit their learning analytics, because I can see exactly what a student learned, how soon they learned it, what the obstacles were. That's closer than you think. That will likely happen within a 5-year period. And I know there will be skeptics out there, but you can do learning analytics in a secure environment. I'm very hopeful, and I was hoping that I might live to see the day when it becomes embedded in every institution. Well, what's missing in this new university? What do we have to do to continue to build that edifice internationally and nationally? Well, one, and I'll go through each of these in a little more detail. Number one is we have to understand quality assurance, and we don't. Because most people, if you look through and I've talked to the quality assurance agencies and the ranking agencies and have debated with them at some point, the top 50 universities in the world are not going to change. They, number 5 might become number 4, and you'll have a bit of a shift, but you will never have a serious shift. So our university refuses to play the ranking game because we cannot and will not win that on entry grades or the size of the library. If you're a good digital university, you shouldn't have a print library. You will have digital copies of everything. You will have assembled all that. But they don't rank the power of your digital library, not at least the ranking agencies I know. What we also have to understand, if it's not quality assurance, is how universities are funded. What's the business case underpinning a university? We think we understand, particularly people on boards think they understand, but I could argue that all of the rules governing funding do not understand the new e-university. Governance systems are also antiquated, and I've seen that around the world. They tend to reinvent the past. And we also don't have well-developed resourcing and research strategies. Well, what do we need first in a quality assurance international environment? We need a system whereby credits from one university in one part of the world might be movable to another university. That currently is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do. Could it be achieved? Yes, through careful negotiation and an understanding particularly by national governments. The second point, faculty control and the marginalization of the academy, is one of the real dangers of an e-university, let's say like our university, where you can drive 40,000 students with 180 faculty and get better outcomes. Having worked with governments in Asia, some of their attitudes were, that's wonderful that you could actually have a university of 40,000 students with 180 faculty. You know, we still have 1,500 support, because they would then allow them to underinvest in intellectual capital. And as we all know, intellectuals can be difficult at times. So if you can have fewer of them, you might have a happier community. I don't agree with that. But even our minister, when he finally understood the way we did things, he said, so you could drive 10 philosophy courses with one professor, and actually through the industrial model of teaching, you could actually teach 20,000 students in philosophy courses with one professor. He always thought that there were too many philosophers in Alberta anyway that were obstructing things. So I said, no society can have enough philosophers. Even if we had 1,000, it wouldn't be enough, because they stimulate thinking. But there is a danger, and I've heard this from a number of senior leaders in developing countries, that the model would allow, unfortunately, an underinvestment in the academy. It would also allow, particularly if you have an e-international environment, an underinvestment in a research agenda. I'm not saying that everyone does it, but I have met enough people that they see that as a key benefit. Another major problem, and I repeat this frequently, particularly in the open educational resource or in the massive online course movement, the MOOCs and the OERs, is that curriculum tends to have a northern focus of the northern hemisphere rather than the south, and that is totally inappropriate and will require considerable investment to make sure it doesn't continue. The other thing that in the new university, which again I've noticed internationally, and this is through whatever accounting system you use, is I believe that courses at university should be treated like infrastructure. That is, they should be written down. If a course is 7 years old, it should be redone. Now, some people say, well, if you have a live professor in the front of a room, he will do it consistently and constantly. Well, I know enough professors, having been one myself, that may not change a course for 10 years either. It's, are you always the most up-to-date? So if you force the rewriting or the recapitalization of courses, and we're working on that. Also, an understanding most universities don't have is that you should be investing probably as much in your IT as in your buildings if you're an e-university. You have to have a very, very robust system, and we do that. We invest more in our IT than we do in our buildings. The other thing that most universities don't understand, the e-universities, they don't understand scalability and how you achieve scalability. They don't understand that cost structures in the new university will be entirely different. We've had one of the major world accounting firms, KPMG, do a study of what our cost structures are, and they are radically different. That means government formulas for funding universities have to be different. It means that ultimately even what students pay for may be different. We also have in the Open University movement completely different intellectual property concerns. We are generally devoted to open courseware, open platforms, and into sharing. That is not necessarily going to be as easy to achieve as you might think. Some of the business strategies that I would suggest, which are being resisted almost everywhere, is you should only have physical interactions with students when absolutely necessary, that is, when pedagogically driven. If it is not have a pedagogical purpose, you can achieve the same with virtual interactions. We have seminars of 20 to 30 students. They are online. They see each other face to face. They do interact. We also believe that if you are to achieve the doubling of the number of students in post-secondaries in the world, you can only achieve it through continuous enrollment. If you start driving it by a semester system that you enroll in September and then second semester and third semester, you will not achieve the numbers you need. Our university, for example, does have continuous enrollment. We have intakes every month. That means you may have a student in a course who's taking the first lesson, one who's on the fourth, and one who's in the sixth. They do teach each other. And that's something, and then you have the faculty members I call the lurking faculty member who will watch that learning, make sure it's on the right track. We also have to think of faculty members not as people engaged in a craft, teaching people at their feet the next generation of the craft. We have to start seeing them as managers. For example, our faculty may have 2 or 3 administrators who actually work with the tutors to interact with the students. Their job is to perhaps supervise subject material experts, to write courses, to revise courses, but they don't spend that much time with students except in the different graduate programs. And again, I've talked about some of this already, centralized support, transferability, and the mechanics of examinations. And I believe that within I hope 5 to 10 years, we will no longer need examinations because there will be different forms of assessment. The other objection to e-universities everywhere is people are saying, well, you can't build communities online. Well, I would say talk to young people. They will say their communities are online. Their communities are global. Their communities are real. And their communities are as real as physical communities. What our university is finding is that while traditional universities in the province of Alberta and Canada grow at the rate of 4 to 5% per year, in the last few months ours are growing at the rate of 12%. And the reason that growth is so great and our average age is coming down is because the young, born digital natives, as we call them, prefer a different mode of learning. Well, and yes, do we in our cyber communities in Canada have cultural communities? Yes, we have very strong cultural communities, communities of practice and communities of research, all online, and they're very robust and they do work. We also are engaged in our university in research, but in an e-environment. So the 13 oil companies which are scattered around will interact with our scholars through the Athabasca River Basin Research Institute, which sounds very physical, but it isn't. It's actually all virtual, but that community is a very, very powerful one. Now, what I want to conclude with is an observation which to me is a very important one. I have found that as the e-university matures, and it is still young and it is maturing and it will change, what is happening? Governments are imposing restrictions internationally. They have probably doubled or tripled in the last 5 years. For example, the United States about 6 years ago imposed under the Higher Education Reconciliation Act a stipulation that student loans cannot be used to take courses from foreign distance providers. Now, if you're an American student and you moved to Canada, for example, and you wanted to take a distance course from Athabasca, if you moved, that's okay. But you could not take it in the States, despite the fact that the university is accredited by one of the regions in the United States. And there's various reasons for that. So that's one form of restriction. Another restriction that I've seen happening in Asia and South America is, and by professional bodies, is that 20 to 25%, in some cases even greater, of your materials must be learned in a residential environment. There's no pedagogical reason for it. There is no evidence for it, but nevertheless, that is what is being imposed. You might ask why that is. Those are two of the most significant impositions that are happening. The reason I would argue is a sociological one, and I don't think the EU universities have sat down and thought about the inadvertent or unintended consequences of what they are proposing. If, for example, let's say in Canada, you doubled the participation of students, or if you did it in a developing country as well, what you will find is that there are, and let's say the university can give quality degrees, I'm making some assumptions, what you will find is there's twice as many people pursuing jobs as you might have elsewhere. All of a sudden, the what I call the middle classes or the upper middle classes who used to get and ensure the success of their children through going to those institutions will find competition. And that competition for places is going to be quite serious. And then we have to figure out, how is society going to manage that? Because if we do it through restriction, if we do it through marginalization of the open universities, we will have failed the next generation of learners and all those people that are currently disadvantaged. Another restriction that I have observed in certain parts of the world is that students from an open university, they may get a degree, they cannot, come hell or high water, they cannot ever go to a classical or residential university. It will not be allowed, even if they are the most brilliant person. There are two pathways and two sets of standards and two types of jobs. And that is very, very sad. So what I would call is that the people who are managing e-universities, open universities, digital universities, particularly as they move down to the path of openness, they're going to have to work carefully with their governments, very carefully, to make sure that the restrictions within those countries are also minimized and removed ultimately. I was asked by our minister, it's when the laws came in the US with the student grants, well, don't you think Canada should just do the same thing? I said, no, because we want our students to be internationalized. I want our students to take courses from the Arab Open University, wherever. I want our government to actually support that kind of internationalization and learning. If it does not happen, we will become a narrower and narrower world. So I'm really quite anxious, quite concerned about these increasing restrictions. I believe that people like yourselves and people like myself, organizations like the International Council, must press for the removal of barriers to universal learning. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Pennicock. It's a very interesting lecture, and I think there are a lot of questions that might be raised later on to discuss some of the points you raised in this discussion. The second speaker is Professor Michael Shorten. He's a professor of special education at the University of South Florida in Tampa, Florida. He has extensive experience in Southeast Asia and has conducted many seminars and consultations in the area of distance and e-learning. He was a 2000-2008 U.S. Fulbright Scholar, and he has presented keynote speeches in several Asian countries. He was also part of the USAID research project in e-learning in Indonesia. He teaches online web-based courses at the University of South Florida, as well as serving as the former director of USF Distance Learning for several years. Dr. Procotis.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to come in and participate with this conference. Let me get through this. Most of what is here has just been documented. I was our USF, University of South Florida, Director of Distance Learning. And within that context, we currently have about 50,000 students at the university, and 40,000 students will take some form of distance learning during their academic career. We have a variety of technologies that we use. We are not married to one. Satellite communications, we have the only uplink in the state of Florida. Our master's degree programs go to 7 South American countries via satellite and internet come back. Video conferencing is how I became the director. Working with our teachers in the schools, we had a 12-county, probably a 200-mile radius from the university. Driving last night in the traffic here in Kuwait, you know it takes time to get between point A and point B during rush hour. Our teachers could not get to the classes on campus because of the rush hour, because of the commute. So I designed a video conferencing system that went to 6 or 7 locations. I truly thought that was going to capture the distance learning mode for the university and for the country as well. I did not think online learning was going to go anyplace, so my expertise is probably very limited. By 2004, video conferencing was almost non-existent, and the online courses just took off. We did bring in, there was a comment the other day, yesterday, about selecting your course management, learning management system. What we did was bring on 3 CMSs, WebCT, at the time it was called Course Information, and Top Class. Course Information is now Blackboard, and somebody talked about that yesterday as well. And what we did was allow the faculty and the students to select the CMS that they wanted to use. Remember, administrators, those of you who are making the decisions, allow the people that are going to be using the software to provide input into that decision-making process. So our faculty and students decided on WebCT and Blackboard, and probably by 2007, 2008, we became an executive demo center for Blackboard. We did away with WebCT, and as of January 1st, right around the corner, we are transitioning to Canvas, another CMS. And I think the sole reason I've been out of the administration part of it is economics. Blackboard is a very expensive software to use at your university based on the numbers. Canvas, as you know, open framework. It's like Moodle. There is limited costs in the licensing and operation. It's in a cloud. We do not have to provide the servers on the campus like we did with Blackboard. We had one level of a building totally dedicated for the use of Blackboard. And again, as of January 1, we no longer have Blackboard. I'm transitioning my classes now. I have 2 classes going on today. I worked on them last night. They are in Blackboard, but come January 1st, it's going to be all Canvas operation. Most of my work has been in Southeast Asia. As it was mentioned, my content area is training teachers to work with children with disabilities. But through the video conferencing and that, I became involved in the distance learning aspect. And in Southeast Asia, I've assisted many universities in the transition from traditional models to an e-learning model, be that a hybrid model, part face-to-face, part e-learning, or in a total situation. Two of the open universities I've worked with significantly is Sukhothai Thammatira Open University outside of Bangkok, and also the University Tarbika in Indonesia, the Open University, and I believe she's the past president of ICDE. Yeah, current president? Okay. Think about Indonesia. It's the fourth largest, third largest country in the world. The research project I was involved with, they have 7.5 million teachers to elevate from a 2-year degree to a 4-year degree. And they have until 2018 to accomplish that. There's no way to do that unless distance learning is involved. They have an extensive one-way video television set up. That was my recommendation because the transponder is like $125, and they could mass produce their classes and get to every one of the 7,000 islands. Not all of them are inhabited, but many of the people live in very, very remote areas. Okay, let me speed along. Today, I'm working on a project that has concluded. We're doing the follow-up now, the data, in Vietnam. And I'd like to overview that, and I think you're going to find the similarities between some of the problems, some of the drawbacks that you're having that came out yesterday is experienced in Vietnam as well, and I truly believe it's a universal. It's just not this region, it's not the Arab countries, that everybody who is transitioning probably goes through the same set of stages in order to accomplish their e-learning program. So we're going to talk about that. The basis of it was centers of excellences, and I'm going to focus on the 2 centers of excellences in e-learning. Vietnam, very long state, about 2-hour flight north to south, and about 10-minute flight east to west. So they have a vast region to cover, and they're a struggling country as well. Economically, they're moving forwards. 92 million people in Vietnam. They have major health issues throughout the country. Their 8% GNP, gross national product, is attributed to health issues, and that doesn't rank them very high for the number of people. HIV is an issue, infectious disease. The 2.2 beds per 1,000. To make that real, don't get sick in Vietnam. They're excellent medical doctors and nurse practitioners, but if you have to go into the hospital and you're put into a bed, there are 2 other people in that same bed. They lack the number of hospitals and beds in order to accommodate the people they have to. So, Vietnam's a beautiful country to visit, to travel in, but don't get sick there. Don't get sick. Medical training is a 6-year program. ICT, they're very adept at their phones, 1 or 2 phones. But when you ask them to go beyond what they use on their phone, communication, text messages, maybe a digital file on contacts, could be other functions that they're using. They're probably only using 20–30% of what the phone can do. The transition to e-learning becomes problematic in terms of thinking outside of the box. What can this do? How can this program help us to achieve the ends that we want? Another issue is the infrastructure within the universities, and also the number of ISPs that are available. You go to any community in Vietnam, you have little shops that have a ton of computers and internet access, but it's limited to only 7 or 8 ISPs, and most of the time the kids are in there playing games on the machines. Okay, the background. It's a 5-year project. It just ended in December. It was funded by the Netherlands, quite a bit of money, 5.5 million euro. It was awarded to the Ministry of Health in Vietnam, and it involved 8 of the medical government universities. There's other private universities spread throughout the country. 2 or 3 of them, Hanoi, Hue, and Ho Chi Minh City, are national distribution in terms of their service area. The other universities are regional. So we're covering the whole, if you remember the map, we're covering the whole country by including these 8 medical universities. The purpose of the project was to sustain and develop in terms of health and medical needs and services. Sustainability, and it was spread out, it's difficult. As many of you know, you get into a project, this one is quite similar. As soon as the funding disappears, the activities disappear, sometimes, many times. And that's one of the things I didn't want to see happen here. Increased medical knowledge using 21st century technology. Many of the hospitals do. They want to improve upon that. Distance and e-learning is certainly an avenue to consider. To lower the overall cost, many of their graduates of that 6-year program are sent overseas to schools, and that increases the cost for them. Share resources and expertise. We're all pretty parochial in our content. My university doesn't share a lot with another university 20 miles away. And there's expertise throughout Vietnam, and it is diverse, it's sparse. I cited here previously, 70% of the people are still living in rural areas, so rural clinics and hospitals need to be linked into this. They have an attitude of we want to share what we have across the country. And they were to develop, as part of this project, 5 centers of excellences. And they were to collaborate on 5 areas of medical issues and concerns. They wanted to provide the framework for enabling and participating of all stakeholders. It's important. They're still a communist country. The attitude is managed by the communist doctrine. However, they're getting more capitalistic as we speak. Their economy is growing. The attitudes are changing slowly, but including all stakeholders, that's very prominent in a communist doctrine, that everybody is on the same footing. I'm rushing through some of the bases so I can get to the details of it. The COE design, support services and different subject matters, guidance, identifying and establishing pedagogical resources to be shared across the 8 universities. A lot of team building. The first year of the project was to bring together about 250 people in order to decide what centers of excellences were going to be designed and developed. Some of this was done politically. They were given time off from their universities, the 8 universities. They were paid for participating. Is that the reason they participated? Some of them did, solely for that purpose. They got extra money. They don't get paid very much in Vietnam, even the medical doctors. They're running a private practice on the side. So any extra funds that they can achieve, they're looking to do that. Okay, the 5 constructs was health management, medical education, economic evaluation, medical and health research, and of course, e-learning. And these were 5, except e-learning 2 were developed in e-learning. The e-learning COEs, Hanoi Medical University and Hue University. HMU served as the administrative unit because the funds were awarded to the Ministry of Health, which is based in Hanoi. And politically, most of the funding, programs, et cetera, still flow to the northern part of the country. It's a long history there, and I know you're aware, I'm aware of it, and so forth. But politically, that is the reason HMU was cited as the administrative unit for the e-learning. They shouldn't have been. The expertise lies at Hue University, which is halfway down the country on the East Coast. Other members from the 6 university made up the committee, but again, the committee was led by Hanoi Medical. E-learning was defined, anything that involves some form of electronics, that's the way they were defining e-learning. And my role and function was to address the distance learning aspect of online courses. They started out with Blackboard, because Hue University had Blackboard in, but I kind of convinced them to move to a open sourceware, which was Moodle, and to have one common CMS across the 8 medical universities. And that's important. we hear different LMS, CMS programs being developed from what people are presenting, but when students move from one university to another, either physically or virtually, they have to learn a new system, a new format, same with instructors if they're teaching. So it was more prudent to look at one common CMS that everybody could use, and they decided on Moodle. Okay, what are the cultural and traditional considerations that we have to overcome for the 8 medical universities to help and design? And I think as you look down through this, you're going to see that many of them are the same traditions that your experiences too. We heard yesterday one of the presentations on a Chinese, and I bet it was Confucius, about teaching and learning. If you tell me, I don't learn. If you teach me, I may learn. If you involve me, I will learn, something to that effect. So Feng also looked at Confucius and the attitude. Buddhism is still strong and alive in Vietnam, and many of the teachings and attitudes of that religion are incorporated into students and teachers. Teachers are revered in Vietnam. Students do not challenge teachers. The programs are very teacher-centered. Unfortunately, many of the instructors elementary, primary, secondary, university levels continue to stand in front of the students and read my lecture notes. And students are writing, flipping a page, writing. Very rote memorization. There is little critical thinking that's involved. Although this is changing, I'm not saying this is universal across Vietnam, but think about the medical community. If there's a discipline that has been rooted in tradition in the way they prepare doctors and nurses, my university is the same. It's the medical profession. It's very difficult to change the behaviors and attitudes of our medical community. And think about this systematic change from a teacher-directed process to a process where they're no longer the authority figure, the figure that knows all content, that you don't ask questions, I know it all. And that is a difficult system to transition from. And I'm sure some of your programs are the same way. Instructors have to become more facilitative in their ability to generate questions from students. You will never see a hand go up. Never see a hand go up. As soon as the lecture is over, they're off to the study room and they're all rereading their notes and information. The students rely on the teachers for all their course information. We brought a set of students in one of the training sessions to talk to them about e-learning and how they would consider it, and they had no knowledge of it. They didn't quite understand what the intent was. They saw some possibilities, but they still wanted the teacher to direct their learning. We experienced that in some of our, I don't teach any face-to-face class anymore, but when I did, students did not want to be actively involved. They wanted to sit there and take lecture notes. Okay, the model I represented, this came up yesterday in a model too. The focus is it's changing the culture of the university or the programs. We focused on the medical community and changing that culture in terms of the way that they teach and learn and their students learn. It's very difficult, but it involves various influences within the campus. Instructors and students for sure, but that support unit, the e-learning support unit, is one of the main keys to a successful program. And I would recommend you strongly involve a teacher, an instructor, in the leadership of that support team. You certainly need the IT people. They all speak a different language, okay? We don't understand them, they tell us what to do, and we go from there. But the teachers, the instructors know the pedagogy. If you're a teacher, you should go to your IT, your e-learning support team, and say, this is the way I teach. How can you manage the technology to allow me to teach that way? The instructor is very important, not only for the pedagogical aspects, but also for other instructors to see that if this teacher can do it, I can do it too. There's less resistance from the group if one of their own is directing them, participating in their training. Expectations of the group. How am I on time? Okay. 5 minutes? Okay. The expectations was to have a well-developed e-learning support team that the instructors were trained and students were trained. The course designs, critical. We talked about content yesterday, and I don't know of any content, if it's properly designed, if the program is properly designed, I don't know of any content that can't be managed through an e-learning program. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time and energy, but it can be done. Faculty are evaluated on their e-learning teaching and provided feedback throughout the year. Students are well prepared for systemic change. That's a key one. We've been talking primarily about instructors the last 2 days. What about your students? Have they been prepared to receive e-learning? Open University has been doing modules for many, many years, some excellent learning materials moving into the e-learning aspect. The new students that are coming on board, what are their backgrounds? What are their competencies in order to participate in an e-learning format? The administrators, those of you that are administrators here, you're a key. You can't just talk about e-learning, you have to support it. You're going to have to find the funds to improve the infrastructure, to train your instructors, to train your students. They're not going to do it by themselves. They can't do it by themselves. They need the university administrators to be behind what they're trying to accomplish. If that's open learning, if that's e-learning from a university, traditional-based college or campus. Whoops, sorry. Okay, HMU, Hanoi Medical University, COE, again, they're in Hanoi, the premier university, medical university in Vietnam. They date way back. They operated through all the wars that they had. They're well-respected, well-known. Expertise is there. You can see, I'm not going to read down through it. When they started out, it was very good. They did have an instructor as one of the co-directors of the e-learning support unit. But that instructor was a health professional, and she wanted to go on. She took off for Australia for another degree, and the e-learning support was given to, directorship was given to an IT person. Very good on the IT, wasn't so good on teaching e-learning. And that caused part of the problem for Hanoi Medical University. Okay, Hue, again, halfway down the country on the East Coast, Hue had an advantage. They have a learning resource center. They were given money to develop 4 learning resource centers, one of which is based at Hue Medical University. And Hue is also one of the few universities in Vietnam that has multiple disciplines. They have economics, pedagogy, architecture, plus their medical program. Universities in Vietnam are pretty discipline specific. There's a university for pedagogy, a university for economics, medical university, they teach one discipline. Maybe a lot of, in economics, it may be business, management, accounting, but it focuses on one discipline. But Hue is a little bit different, and it has a long history of being the scholarship of Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh was born outside of Hue, just north of Hue in Vinh, but went to school at Hue University. The Learning Resource Center has, it's excellent. You look at the 3 people in the hospital in the bed there, and the buildings are crumbling down, the facilities are not that good. It's amazing what these medical and health professionals can do with very limited resources. But when it comes to the LRE, it's like a beacon. It's a beautiful building, 3 or 4 stories, conference center, video conferencing center within that, computers for students to use, digital libraries, hard copy as well. It's a beautiful facility for designing, developing the e-learning support system. Directed by a medical doctor, he teaches e-learning courses, and the support team is made up of graphics, animation, video expertise. Excellent. and it should have been the leadership. We went from Hue Medical University, from that e-learning support team, we went to the other universities and trained and did evaluations where Hanoi Medical did not. Okay, project results. Probably about 250 medical personnel received some form of training. That could mean a seminar, could mean a discussion such as this, and some of them at Hue University. I was here for about a month and a half, and they had extensive training going on for about 20 medical doctors. 320 online courses. I would say at this point, I'm going to Vietnam after this conference to follow up on the data collection, and at this time, most of those courses are probably considered still in development. One or two are actually operating. Online courses designed at all the universities, at least they got started on it, but this is 5 years as well. E-learning materials developed, hard copies they would put online, and open communications among the 8 universities. What didn't succeed so well is that the systemic change is difficult. Also, as I mentioned before, the participants, this was not their sole responsibility. They had other teaching, medical, research responsibilities, and this was something extra to do. And unfortunately, with many of us, it works out the same way. We have our day-to-day responsibilities, and now we're asked to change the way that we're doing. Not only change the philosophy, become more student-directed, but to change from traditional face-to-face to an e-learning model. Limited support, pedagogical assistance. Some of the instructors who were trained overseas actually got it. They understood the advantages that can be used in an e-learning format. They understood it. They don't have the time to develop the courses and to teach the courses. Those of you that made the transition from traditional face-to-face to an e-learning model, you know that's much more time. There's more time involved in designing, developing, teaching, evaluating your e-learning course than there is in a face-to-face environment. Okay, considerations. Medical use of technology is current. It's here. We can't say that we can't do this, can't do that. The medical technology is here. If you want to use it, it's available. Is it efficient for you to use? Is there money involved? All of those are good variables to consider. In your Kuwait News Times this morning, let me read that. I've got to get my glasses on. Telemedicine consults may reduce errors at rural emergency rooms. It's right here. You already have it. And it's been going on for years. Our university participates with several others in telemedicine. So the importance of that to the Vietnam community is to demonstrate that the information and the practices are available to them if they choose to use it. Systemic change, again, is very difficult. It's a slow process. Those of you that are having difficulties getting across that barrier to involve the students, it's going to take time. You're not going to do it overnight. Be consistent, get reinforcement from your administrators and from your support team. The cultural traditions. How do you change centuries of doing or believing in a philosophy and transitioning to a new one? It's very difficult to do that, and for some folks, it's never. We still have professors at USF that will not use their email. So departments, they have to get a hard copy sent to some of the professors because most of us are picking the information up through the email. Some of the individuals, not many, but some of the individuals refuse to use the email system. Quality control, that was brought out. It's always questioned. If you have well-trained instructors, if your students are trained in receiving information through an e-learning format, if you have a good course design, and if you have a support team, the quality is as good, if not better, than many of our traditional classes. There's a lot of variables that go into making a successful e-learning program. It's just not a teacher teaching a course. There's much more involved. COE support unit responsibilities. Both of the units at Hanoi Medical and Hue, they were both responsible for the entire infrastructure of their university. And now they have this project on top of that in order to design and develop and train individuals to work in e-learning. Monumental tasks. They consider releasing people solely to do the support unit for your e-learning program. That's their sole responsibility, to help instructors and students participate in e-learning classes. Students need to develop critical thinking skills. Lecture format, standing up and lecturing to students does not create critical thinking skills. It probably dummies down the students in terms of long-term growth and development. We need students in the medical field, in business and economic. We need students to think outside of the box, and traditional lecture-based, stand up in front of them, have them take notes, that's not going to do it. Less teacher-directed designs, again, that's cultural, that's history, that takes time. Some of the instructors will do it, some of your instructors will have a very difficult time accomplishing that task. So when I leave tomorrow, I go back and we look at the evaluation. I can have more data for you, but the project is over in terms of funding. The success, it's a start. They have a long ways to go, but at least some of the instructors, some of the students, and the support design team have gone through a 4-year process that has introduced them and put them directly involved in transitioning their classes from face-to-face environments to a blended environment, some e-learning, some face-to-face, and some are now into an e-learning format. So the success is minimal, but the grounds for further development is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Churton. It's quite an experience in Vietnam, and I think it has a lot to share also with our experience here in Kuwait. And I think everybody has enjoyed your lecture. The third speaker is Ustad Michel Naama. Ustad Michel Naama is a lecturer and course chair at the Arab Open University in Lebanon, where he teaches at the business and IT departments. Ustad Naama worked for many years as math business instructor for several schools, colleges, and universities both in Lebanon, American University of Beirut, Beirut Baptist School, Christian Teaching Institute, مقاصد مؤسسة المقاصد, and in the United Arab Emirates. هو حاصل على MS in pure mathematics from the American University of Beirut. He also holds several certificates, mainly from the higher colleges of technology in the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Your Excellency. Good morning, everyone, and assalamu alaikum. It's very difficult to speak after great speakers like Professor Fritz and Dr. Michael, especially that I'm a mathematician, and it's known mathematicians are not great public speakers, and especially when your bosses are in the front seats, but I'll do my best. So today I'm going to talk about how to use short videos as a support tool for teaching. The outline for the 15 minutes that I have will look like an introduction, why short videos, then I'm going to share my experience with you, a sample and a methodology, and I will show you my findings and wrap up with a conclusion for a future work. Before I start, I would like to tell you something about myself. Allow me to share a personal experience. I didn't know how to wear a tie, how to make a tie. I used to depend on others to do it for me, my parents, anybody can help me, and so on. Until 2 years ago, I had to attend a certain ceremony where I have to look smart, good-looking, and well-dressed. And I asked my wife, do you know how to make a tie? And she said, of course. My wife knows everything, by the way. And all women knows everything, poor men. So I asked her if she can help. And she did it. but it was this short. Then I decided to consult someone else, and I went for my neighbor, Mrs. YouTube. Do you know Mrs. YouTube? She's your neighbor as well? So I consulted Mrs. YouTube for this, and in 2 minutes, I had hundreds of videos how to make a tie, a French one, a British one, different nodes, and so on. And after 5 trials, I had a success, and it was good enough for the ceremony. Why I'm saying this, I just wanted to show you the power of a short video. It's stronger than my wife, definitely, but what I mean here is a 2 minutes video can be so helpful for a student, especially if we are to encourage independent learning, make students search for their answers. We're not there for them anytime. They have to find their way out. Using multimedia as a support tool for teaching is not new. It is a common practice in today's education. It brings course alive, students are happy, it captures their attention, and also it is a good for motivation and enhance their skills. Not only their IT skills, it could be business, could be mathematics, could be any discipline. You can build any exercise out of a short video. You can tell your students, you can Google this for me, find this video, and answer this set of questions. And why short video? Before this, in this article, we offer an example of a short video from an educational environment, particularly the course I'm chairing, M248, Analyzing Data. And as I told you, we encourage students to become independent learners. And for a further step, promoting lifelong learning. Lifelong learning is a very key word nowadays. How to learn while you are living, while you're going on. There's no particular age for learning. You can learn at the age of 50, 60, maybe 70. So again, why short videos, not the long ones, for example? Short videos are small, easy to download, at a low cost, unlike videos 40 or 50 megabytes and so on. Educators are always looking for effective ways to create productive learning environment. Productive learning environment. This is a very important word. Effective ways. We all, as educators, and you are professionals, you constantly seek methods to make your teaching style a better one. And one of these ways is using short videos. Short videos have become practical media solutions for delivering instructional materials. Yes, as I have told you, any kind of discipline, you can customize a video to fit your concepts or whatever you're teaching. As the technology continues to grow both more sophisticated and more user-friendly, teachers continue to become more adept at integrating these media into their instruction. Technology is not difficult. It's not. We should not be afraid of technology. It's very easy for everyone. It is in the hands of all users, tutors and students. And we can easily learn new techniques, new softwares to bring into our classroom. What did we do? My experience. Now, probably you have heard about Minitab. This is a statistical software, pretty much like SPSS, SAS. This is very famous. North America, they use SAS. Minitab, as a semi-professional, let's say semi-professional statistical software, that is one of the learning outcomes and the learning objectives of the course Analyzing Data M248 that we teach at AOU. Now, using the screen recording software, Camtasia, and my friend yesterday talked about the software, and by the way, there are infinite number of softwares that can do the same job. We created 28 videos tutorial that guide students how to apply certain statistical features using Minitab. These videos are so short, like 2 minutes, straightforward, to the point, and teach students how to make certain features using the Minitab. And if you allow me, I would like to show you one of the videos. Oops, sorry.
Hello for 8 students. In this short tutorial video, I will show you how to use Minitab to perform a chi-square test. As you have seen in class, a chi-square test is used to test the dependency, the association of two categorical variables when the data is given in the form of a contingency table. In this given example, we are testing the dependency of two variables, smoking habits and gender. The null hypothesis is smoking habits and gender are independent, while the alternative hypothesis, smoking habits and gender are dependent. Now go to the Stat tab, go down to Tables, then click on chi-square test. Double-click column C2, double-click column C3, press OK, and here you go, this is your result. Now observe the p-value. The p-value is too small. In particular, it is smaller than 0.01, and therefore we have a strong evidence against the null hypothesis H0. That is, we can deduce smoking habits and gender are dependent. Thank you for listening.
As you have seen, a short video, maybe 2 minutes, can pass the message, can tell students what they need to learn. They learned a new concept, how to use a chi-square test, and a practical example. So at the same time, the student have additional IT skills, and at the same time, he learned new concepts, new mathematical and statistical concepts. Did we succeed? This is a very big question. Yes, I can say so. We help students to improve their technology skills. They become more into using the computers. They can handle exercises using Minitab, and so on. We provided students with easy access to information. Yes, these videos can be anywhere. And yesterday, one of our colleagues from Saudi Arabia, she talked about repositories, مستودعات رقمية, something like this. You can upload these videos anywhere. In 5 minutes, you can go to something called Wikispaces or any wiki and create your own website and upload these videos, and then invite your students to come and see these ones. Definitely you can use Moodle, you can use WebCT, you can use Blackboard, you can use any of these softwares. But even you can make your own website in 5 minutes. So yes, this is easy access for information. We save class time to do additional theoretical contents and exercises. So instead of, let's say, wasting time taking students step by step in class, you can save time doing written exercises, manual exercises, and tell students, go away, you have to be independent and learn these by yourselves. Definitely you receive some complaints saying, sir, we need your help, but this is you have to pay the price of becoming independent learners. We gave students the opportunity to go over these short videos whenever they need to. Of course, you can repeat this one until you master the concept and work on developing their individual skills, disregarding the assistance of their tutors. Tutors are not needed anymore. No, we are needed. We have to be next to our students. Whether our students like to be in class, direct teaching, or they like using technology and short videos, ladies and gentlemen, we have to be equipped. We have to be ready for them. We have to have the skills necessary to help them, whatever their choice is. There is still a lot of questions. Definitely, we have matched so many objectives, but still there is a lot. Do we encourage students to become independent learners? This is a big task. This is the task of every teacher. Did we promote lifelong learning? This is also a big question that needs answer. Did we affect students' academic performance? We're going to see that in the coming slides. Now, allow me to share with you the experiments that I did in order to assess the relation between different teaching techniques and student performance. We had to run certain experiments. So we considered 3 groups, A, B, and C. Group A, they received their education concerning Minitab through direct teaching. And Group B had the chance to have the videos and learn by themselves. While Group C, they enjoyed a blended learning environment and received both. Now, using one of the famous statistical tests, that is chi-square in this case, because we have 2 categorical variables. The first one, performance of students, and the second one, the 3 types of techniques that I have explained to you. And also, we used another experiment to check whether the marks of those in Group A and those in Group B are the same. And for that, we use another test that is the t-test. You might ask yourself why we did 2 experiments. The fact is, according to the results of the first experiment, we find no relation. They are totally independent. The manners of teaching and our student performance. It was a surprise. Not really. Maybe our students are not really ready to become independent learners. They are not ready yet to tell them, go and learn yourselves. And therefore, we as educators, we as tutors, have to do more effort to encourage our students to become independent learners. That's why we did the second experiment. And here we compared the average of those in Group A and the average of those in Group B. I remind you, A, they had direct teaching, and B, they had the videos. And these grades, and sorry, maybe I missed this, these grades are those related to the TMA, the students' TMA. And this experiment confirmed that those who received videos, who used videos, had better marks than those students who learned through direct teaching. And the p-values are a good example, are good evidence for that. This is purely mathematical, and I'm sure you don't like to hear this. To wrap up, audiovisual can offer exciting opportunities for teachers and learners, for both of us, you and your students. It's a really good opportunity, and I encourage all of you to try it, whatever the discipline you have. However, the value of a video relies on how it is implemented in classroom. The video, the technique is good, but if you don't invest this in the proper way, you misuse it. So you have to have the skills in order to use these videos. Many advantages and disadvantages are associated with this type of media. Instructors are the ones who can decide what will work in their courses. As I told you, it's up to you. The technology is there, hundreds of softwares, hundreds of websites, and all are ready. All what you need to do, get used to these. Search. Find the things you need to your classroom. Find the things that your students might need. When decision is made, adapting our technique can help tutors promote a positive experience for students, as shown in the second experiment outcomes. and this is clear. So we did not give up after the first experiment. We ran another experiment, and we're ready to run more experiments and more factor analysis to see why we failed in the first experiment, why we couldn't prove that students' performance are better when they receive blended learning. There is something wrong somewhere. That's why we need a factor analysis to know why. Part of my future work will be repeating experiments in order to build a series of comparative results, again, evaluate student performance, illustrate responsiveness of this new teaching technique, and there is a lot of techniques besides using short videos. Imagine that you are a cyber tutor. You can sit at home and send everything to your students, and they can do it and send it back to you. It's very good. I can be sick any day. Show further evidence that this technique promotes lifelong learning. Yes, you can learn at the age of 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 15 years, and even if you are old, you can still learn. You learn while you're crossing the roads. You learn while you are in the mall. You learn while you are watching a TV. You can learn anytime, any place. And this is open learning. Thank you for your attention, and I will leave you with this nice cartoon about lifelong learning. I hope you like it. Thank you so much. You're a great audience.
شكرا أستاذ نعمة على هذه يعني التجربة العملية التي شاركت الأخوان جميعا فيها، وأعتقد أنه تجربة تستحق يعني المتابعة والنقاش. الآن الباب مفتوح للنقاش، أسئلة أو أي مداخلات. لدينا تقريبا نص ساعة. تفضل أستاذ.
It's regarding the experiment.
Yes.
I would like to know more about the conditions of your experiment. For example, for instance, how many students you took for Group A and Group B and Group C?
Yes. I didn't went through this technique because I respect that the audience do not come from the same background. Almost 25 for each section, A, B, and C, each 25. And they are totally independent, different students. And so the experimental design for the sample is you have 3 independent groups. And since you have 3 independent groups, you would run a chi-square test. Though your samples are related samples, you use a different technique called McNemer test.
Okay. And
Dr. Mufid Abu Musa, Jordan branch. Thank you for the videos, short videos. Yeah, I support you very much about this. I've been using this for 3 years for math education courses. The educational model, well, this is what I want to add. Maybe we use the technique called flipping the instruction. An idea now for the Camtasia, it has the possibility that to add interactive questions while the video is running. So you can interact with the students. And I have done maybe 3 papers about this, and it was very effective.
I'm very happy to hear that you're using this technique. And as I told you, you can customize it the way you want. And you can shape it to your course, whether it is mathematics, business, or IT, or even education. And I'm happy for you.
Can I, Dr. Abdullah Al-Ajmi, Arab Open University, Kuwait. I do have 2 questions, if you allow me, Dr. مساعد. The first question for Dr. Churton, sorry, I can't see that. In your experience in Vietnam, which is very very actually very exciting. I mean, and very informing. My question is, where do you find a role for culture, either positive or negative, in introducing new ways, creative ways, and different modes of education, like open learning, as you just described? The education philosophy there is built on tradition of learning through instructions and face-to-face and following actually kind of apprenticeship instructions. How do you find culture in that regard? Is it going to be, can you invest in that, which is already established, or is it going to be something that is an obstacle in the future? This is one question, and I'm just interested in the culture question because my second question to Dr. Mohammed, Michel?
No.
Sorry, Michel. Thank you for the presentation, and I like the caricature. The thing is that you raised questions,
yes,
which I can imagine very strong questions, but you didn't answer those. And these are going to be, I think, these are the core of your argument, that when your argument should have been based on is, did we create independent learners? And did we improve our performance in that through open education and our experiences? What happened to that? And I'm not asking you to answer these, no, but just wonder why didn't you answer these? Thank you, shukran.
Yes, thank you for your sorry.
I think probably each culture is unique how you introduce a new concept. With the Vietnamese culture, it was open discussion, one among the faculty, the instructors themselves, on the concept of teaching, exploring different ways to teach, not with the IT, just common teaching aspects, where traditionally, and then probably most of us are in the same situation, when we start out, we probably teach the same way we've been taught. So the concept of changing, of experimenting with different methodologies is not at our forefront. Our forefront is to address the content and teach the way we've been taught. I know when I went through my university training, I never received a pedagogical course, how to teach university students. Probably got a little bit as I was a primary teacher as well, but nothing at the university to do that. So what I did with the Vietnamese instructors was to have, they like to talk. They like to talk and they like to eat. That's two of the top priorities. So a little food brought in and had conversations and just talked about aspects of teaching and change. And it helped where there were some instructors who had received training overseas that was more in a student-directed format, and they could enter the discussion. One of the instructors, in fact, out of Australia had 2 or 3 courses that were online total, so that blended in with the discussion. But I think you need to capitalize on what's unique in the culture and tradition, and not one size, just one way is going to work with all cultures.
Thank you for your question. The questions needs a system for answering such questions. I mean, if you are to monitor your students to see if they become independent learners or lifelong learners, you have to have a proper system to monitor their progress, and maybe after graduation to see where did they go, what things they have achieved, and so on. So I don't think there is a simple answer for such questions. However, I think the problem comes from schools sometimes, because I'm speaking about my experience in Lebanon. I can't generalize. I don't allow myself to generalize. But students are used to spoon feeding. They like easy things. They like to say, this is the solution. Probably if a student come to me and say, sir, how can I solve this, for example? And I tell him, go find it yourself, refer to page 15, for example, he won't take this as an answer. We say the teacher is not helpful or probably not supportive. He will not see this as you trying to encourage him to learn himself. And I'm not next to him anytime and every time. So to answer these questions needs a lot of research, needs a lot of work. You need to have a proper sample and you constant monitoring of these students. And I feel this is a very good path for a research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like first to express my great pleasure in seeing His Excellency Dr. Rashid الهارون, مساعد Rashid الهارون, back in the Arab University. He has honored the Arab University in the past by being a member of the Board of Trustees of the university. It's indeed a pleasure. Mr. Fritz, our Honorable Distinguished President of Athabasca, I would like to ask if you have some extension of your association outside Canada with other sort of institutions or countries in your work. This should sort of reflect more of what Athabasca is doing. And I would like to add to the difficulties that you have mentioned in promoting e-learning and open learning in our part of the world. Since we have no problem with those who were unable to get university education when they were 18 years old and they went into work, and they really appreciate very much that the opportunity, the Arab Open University is providing them the opportunity to have a university degree when they are working. One particular problem in the Arab region is for the 18-year-old high school leavers who enroll in an open learning system. The problem is with their families. Because usually in this part of the world, when you are 18 years old, you are still dependent on your family to put you through college, and they do not like they want to see them go to college every day. They have a problem with them if they are sitting, spending a couple of hours on the computer, on the e-learning platform, whatever it is, and then they have so much free time, they don't know what to do with it. This is one of the problems, so that the face-to-face component that we are providing at the Arab University is reducing this problem, but it's not diminishing this problem completely. Maybe you don't find this in the West, because usually an 18-year-old, he would find a job, whatever, even in a gas station, but not in our part of the world here. This is another problem we are facing, and gradually we are overcoming this difficulty by actually getting the 18-year-olds to spend more time, to come to the university, use the e-library, to interact among themselves. Even we go a little bit further in trying to have for them co-curricular, extracurricular or co-curricular activities. Get them involved in some theatrical, some artistic, some sports facilities, so that they will feel that they are not left out like the other students who go to the traditional universities. Would you like to comment on this? One last point about Mr. Na'me, a mathematician, he is most welcome. The only thing is that the video is helpful for the chi-square test, but there's so much work that is needed from you before that to explain the concept of the chi-square. What is independence, and how you get expected, and frequency when you have the observed frequency. So the video is definitely helpful, and you're doing a very good job there. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for the questions. We have a total at our university of around 450 agreements around the world. Some are deeper than others. We have very strong relations, and Muhammad Ali had just had his book published with the Open University of China, for example. So we have very close relations with a number of the Chinese Open Universities. We also have very strong relations with the Management University of Singapore, which is, I think, one of the leading different universities. I don't think we can apply their ingenuity far necessarily yet, but I admire what they do. We also have strong linkages with the Australians. with the European institutions. And basically, I would like to iterate what some of my colleagues here have said, is that we do understand the unique cultural context of learning everywhere, even in Canada, where one of the most disadvantaged groups are the Aboriginal people. The learning is culturally different. So what we've done, rather than saying, how can we impose our learning effectively on you, it's how do you learn most effectively, and how can we change what we do? And that becomes very, very important. That also becomes important then when we're dealing with the, we call the school leavers, or the 18-year-olds. What's happening, and it happened first in Spain, and University of Catalonia discovered about 3 to 4 years ago that their demographic was rapidly changing from the 28-year-old average to the 18, 19, 20-year-old. What they found there is that the, let's say, the first-born digital generation preferred the independence of e-learning, preferred game-based learning, preferred a whole bunch of other things. And I think we should look at what University of Catalonia is doing and how they're managing that, because I think my observation this year, it's happening to us as well. For the first time, our growth is around 12% per year, and it's really the school leavers that are forming that group. What's also happening in the world, and it's happening in the OECD countries where the documentation exists, is for whatever reason, and the research isn't available yet, is young males are not going into post-secondary of any kind. They're delaying entry. So while we have some groups and some genders starting earlier, we're beginning to see in the OECD countries a completely radical shift. And it's quite serious. And if you, the gender balance in Europe is about 50-50. You go into the States, it's skewed more towards women. You go into Canada, it's even a greater skew. And then you go into the province of Alberta in the north, it's going to be within a generation probably around 80-20, 80% women, 20% men. So we're going to have a different form of social dislocation. So not only do we have to worry about culture and learning, we have to worry about gender and learning as economies change and economies mature. And do we know why this is happening? We don't. Everyone says it's because we have these incredible oil wealth and we have the oil sands and we need, but it isn't. We know that much. So it's a very, very complex environment, and it's one that is unique to every learning group. But that being said, and this is a comment I've been thinking about for quite some time, if we take traditional universities and layer on technology, your cost structures will go up significantly again. If we don't totally reinvent the university and its cost structures, we cannot massify learning simply because the resources don't exist in the world to pull it off. So the real challenge is for the next generation is how do we use technology, how do we use our better understanding of culture to develop new systems which are cost effective, which deepen learning, and which respect the academy. And I think that's the key challenge globally to everyone, and I hope we're all up to it, because if not, we will just have a more expensive system for the people privileged enough to go to institutions.
على اساس عمل وقت بس راح يكون في 3 اسئله اخيره. في اعتقد الاخت عندها سؤال، وفي الاخ زمان تقدم، وفي سؤال اخير. تفضلي اختي. تفضلي.
My question is for Mr. Charton. As far as I understand, for each project there is a specific clear objective, and the objective of the project, as you have specified, is to train tutors to use the e-learning or online learning methodology. I mean blended learning, right? But you were not very clear about the number of target participants. How many along the 4 years of the project cycle were targeted? The second thing, how many did really benefit from that project? And what's the assessment tool that you have used at the project to assess their benefit? And what's the percentage of this benefit? And at the closure of the project, was there a clear analysis? Why did this group of people or that number or that percentage benefit and the rest did not benefit? Because as far as I understand from the presentation, there was a clear emphasis on the fact that the culture barrier played a catalyst role, because you came to the people with a new concept, totally, I mean, root like a radical solution that they are not accustomed to, they were not prepared for, even with the transition thing. Okay, thank you.
The number of people, it was pretty consistent over the 5 years. The total number was in the range of about 240 to 250 across all 5 centers of excellences. The e-learning centers of excellences, the 2 of them, there were about 35 participants. Now, they were not responsible for designing the e-learning program or a course or a class within their respective university. Their responsibility was to support the instructors and students in designing and promoting the classes. So of the other 4 centers of excellences, medical education, economics research, and I forget the 4th one, health practices, the use of e-learning within each of those centers of excellences was to coordinate the information across all 8 medical universities. That probably was very successful. For the e-learning courses themselves to be taught, it was not as successful as planned. Like I in the presentation, there were probably only 2 or 3 of the classes that actually demonstrated effective e-learning practices. The other 300 classes that were developed might have just been a discussion board put up onto a class, or it might have just been the lecture notes posted. So the transition from the lecture base in a face-to-face class made the transition to just posting lecture notes within an online CMS, which all of us agree is not very effective. One instructor in particular at Huey, I think he had a private business enterprise, but any discussion we had and how we were going to move forward came up with, I just want to put my lecture notes on a DVD and hand it to my students. And that was his interpretation of e-learning, and that came up consistently. So the history of providing information to students, for most of the instructors we dealt with, some of them, like I said, understood the concept, but the time and support wasn't there in order to accomplish the task. If you don't have a solid support team, someone who knows the software, someone who can do graphics, animation, video, whatever it might be, how are the instructors going to learn all that in order to promote their classes? They're not. They just don't have the time to do it. So I would focus on designing that support team that's going to be very effective and have a role in that support team that comes from the faculty rank, from the instructor ranks. Because if I'm a teacher and I'm relating to you as a teacher, we have a communication already set up. But IT people are very, very strange people. You need them to help you all the way. And what we found at Huey is that the IT person would sit next to one of the instructors as we're going over the design of the class and just say, let me do it. And he just plugged it in. Well, the instructor didn't learn anything from that. They learned to be dependent on the IT person. And that's what we tried to get avoided from that. So of the people, I would say let's say 6 people at best really understood the benefits of it all. And again, you gotta remember, these are medical doctors who are sitting in a class thinking about their patients in the afternoon or the morning rounds or the research that they're doing or their private practice. How important was this in their scheme of their daily operation? I would say it wasn't that critical. If they didn't get paid, I doubt that they would show up for it. So, unfortunately, money drives a lot of activities for us.
Marwan Al-Aqidi, Vice Rector for Academic Affairs in the Arab Open University. My question to Fritz. Talking about, you mentioned the barriers, and you hope that the barriers should be removed for hopefully in the future. My question is simple. For any e-learning or e-university for the future, I strongly believe, from the experience I have in the Middle East in the last 3 years, being working with the Arab Open University and the link with the Open University, I think we have to make sure that the barriers are there. I don't know what you mean by barriers. You mean the rules and regulation and the procedures? If that is what you mean by barrier, it should be there. Simply with that, the barriers, we cannot enhance our quality assurance. I'm talking about academic quality assurance. The second thing, we have to make sure that with that, the barriers and rules and regulation, we cannot raise the standard. There are so many parameters in this process of e-university or e-learning or even the blended learning. My colleague, Professor Hamdan yesterday said there are so many variables. I'll give you one of the variables we seen worldwide. Now, it's 50 years, almost 50 years since the Open University started. Up to now, the world is not accepting it, if we like it or not. I'm talking from the experience in the United Kingdom. If somebody come applying to our university, coming from traditional university and somebody from the Open University, we have to think twice which one we interview first. Furthermore, if there's more traditional universities, straight ahead comes instruction from the Vice Chancellor, Marwan, look into that as a favorable to the others. I'll give you an experience. Now, the Open University in the United Kingdom, after 45 years, almost 50 years, they have removed the system from module-based FTE paid by government. Now from next year, or this year, I think this year started, it has to be program. That really given as an indication. They try to put rules and regulation to get a degree. The most important factor for the Arab Open University and comparing with the others is completely different. And the beginning of the Open University, people is independent. People, they're looking for knowledge. They're getting a module. They're not getting a qualification. Here is completely different. We're looking for a qualification. People, they go into online, learn, do whatever they can. They even pay extra money outside tutoring, which I'm against that totally. In the end of the day, they try to get the qualification. The Open University in Athabasca and the rest of the world, and particularly in the United Kingdom, they are not interested in that. People, like a lot of people in the United Kingdom, they go for that particular module and they go and study it and they try to pass it. And they're not going to go to, running to their manager, say, well, now you have to increase my salary because I got this extra module. That's completely different. Furthermore, I'm talking about staff. The cost, truly the cost with us is high comparing with a traditional university. And there are so many parameters. I have a lot of my staff, they're spending so much time in marking. With that, I try to negotiate that with the Open University. They say if they don't do this, I managed to reduce it to 50%. From 2 or 3 TMA to 1. But the amount they spend on marking is huge, and that is all cost. Try to argue with the point that what is the benefit if we're going to give them exam in the end of the day? They say, no, learning outcome. They're going to missing learning outcome. Now, we were mentioning another factor when we finished. Hopefully, 5 years, you said 5 years, removing exam. That's another barrier. We try to raise a standard. When we say we remove these, I think we dilute the value. The open learning and the e-learning and the blended, I think personally it has a future, but we have to put the regulation, the rules, and the restriction to make sure it is much better than traditional university. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with anything you said. The whole quality agenda internationally, it's how do you compare quality of a, let's say, Cambridge graduate to an open university graduate, whether it's in the UK or in Canada, or graduate versus another. It takes years and years and years to remove the prejudice against open learning. And it's only, I would say, in the last few years that we've developed strategies that allow that to have been not entirely, but somewhat removed. For example, our university has many agreements with other universities in Canada so that our courses are fully transferable to the great universities in Canada. So if you take a history course from Athabasca, you can transfer it into your degree at the University of Toronto. They're considered the same. That took about a decade to win that battle, but the battle has now been, that particular battle has been won. We decided, although it may seem to you and it seemed to me at the time to be a tad hypocritical, we actually sought accreditation by one of the regions in the US, Middle States, the same one that accredited the Open University in the UK. And we again did that in purpose so that people would understand if we made it through that accreditation process, which most of the Eastern Seaboard universities in the States use, again, that our courses and our degrees are considered equivalent. And what we found is the moment after we got the American accreditation, and one of our undergraduate students applied to an American university, because you were accredited, the questions disappeared all of a sudden. But it takes a long, long time to do that. The prejudices still exist. However, in our own province, where I think our ministers probably may have shared some of the prejudices, now all of a sudden saying, your outcomes are better, they've been verified repeatedly, what are you doing, they ask us, to help the other universities? And I say, well, the other universities, the prestigious universities, are not likely to welcome us to help them improve. It's just the way it is. It's a culture thing that you have to overcome, but it is changing. For example, we opened a university press 3 years ago, and it was an open access press. People said it would fail. We now have, within the first 2 years, it came in second in the world. Second isn't as good as first, but second isn't bad, as the best history book to be published, period. Now, all of a sudden, our press, which is 3 years old and they said wouldn't succeed, is now driving the prestige of the institution. The other university presses in the province, the University of Alberta and University of Calgary, have now come to us and said, we'd like to join and have one university press, and we would like you to lead it. Now, again, that took time, that took years, but you have to form standards of excellence with your faculty to assume responsibilities in their professional areas so they become number one or number two, not only in your province, not only in your nation, but we try to do it internationally. And for example, when one of our professors gets a major Gates Foundation grant, which everyone says, well, everyone gets those. Well, actually, they don't. And then within the first year, the outcomes were so good, they said, we'll double that grant. That actually is quite significant. So it's all, how do you promote your institution? How do you demonstrate excellence? Because all of the criteria for excellence are what I call surrogate measures. That is, publications per faculty, entry grades of students, size of library, number of people, students who actually successfully complete a course. None of them really tell you whether the graduates have made an impact in the world, whether they have really made a difference to their communities. So my argument is, and it continues to be to our minister, why aren't we measuring the success of graduates 5 years out? What changes have they made to our society? What kind of contributions have they made? Now, he started to accept that and say that's exactly what we should be doing. Very difficult to measure. And I believe once we have those kind of measures which we all have to push for internationally as well, that open universities will find their place, like the Open University of the UK has, because it's been extraordinarily successful in demonstrating that their research outcomes are amongst the best. Their graduates are amongst the very best. So I think we'll all be there. It's just we have to stick together, as they say, because if we don't stick together, you know, we may hang together in some way or other.
وحيكون عندنا سؤال أخير لأن عامل الوقت.
الدكتور مروان الحربي جامعة الملك عبد العزيز. حقيقة يتفق جميع الباحثين في مجال التعلم والتعليم أن هدفنا هو الأساسي هو تجويد وتحسين عملية التعلم، لكن حقيقة الهدف هذا لن يتحقق بدون النظرة التكاملية. سؤالي حقيقة للدكتور ميشيل، بحثه كان جيد حقيقة، لكن استوقفتني فيه بعض النقاط الجزئية الفنية. الدكتور احتسب مدة العرض الفيديو 2 دقيقة. الإشكالية اللي موجودة عندي، العينة عينة راشدة، والعينة الراشدة لها خصائص معرفية مختلفة. أيضا مقدار التعلم يعني مقارنة بالعينة مقدار قليل 2 دقيقة. فأنا سؤالي على أي أساس أنك حسبت أنه مدة الفيديو حتى يكون فعال وثابت تجريبيا 2 دقيقة، يعني حتى تكتمل النظرة التكاملية من وجهة نظري، وأنا مختص يعني نوعا ما في أبحاث التعلم، كان لابد أن تنظر رؤية أخرى إلى مسألة سعة الذاكرة العاملة، مستوى تجهيز المعلومات، وأيضا أساليب التعلم، لأنها قد تكون أحد الأشياء التي فرقت المتغيرات الفارقة أو الدخيلة التي أثرت على النتيجة. نحن نسعى إلى الرؤية التكاملية. شكرا جزيلا لك.
Thank you for your question. As I mentioned, the short video is a support tool. It's a support tool. It will never replace the tutor in classroom. So that's why the duration is 2 minutes, could be 3 minutes, could be 4 minutes. This is for technical reasons, for being, let's say, smaller in size, easy to download, less cost for students. For downloading, you can customize it the way you want. But again, I have to emphasize this. The short videos will never replace you in classroom. As Dr. Muhammad Ramadan mentioned, there is a lot to be explained concerning chi-square about observed frequencies and so on. What if the data is not stabilized, for example, what do you do? So the short video has a specific role. You can extend it the way you want, but from my experience, the shortest for students, the better. You know, students, when they have a video, long video, they span, it's not good, and they tend to skip, and, you know, they lose concentration. Though, straight to the point, tell them what they need to learn. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. May I just express our thanks and gratitude for this enriching lectures, and I hope with the discussion later on you continue with this matters that you presented today. ألف شكر إخواني وزملائي على حضوركم اليوم، وإن شاء الله نتمنى لهذا المؤتمر كل توفيق ونجاح. شكرا.